Hello everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video is going to be all about first year therapist pay and what you can expect to make your first year as a therapist. Now, the topic of financial transparency is very near and dear to my heart because I have stated many times on this channel that I went into the field knowing next to nothing about what it was going to look like to be a therapist. And I was already in grad school when I heard from someone who had been in the field for many years that she was only making $35K a year, and she was only able to do her job because her husband had a really good job. Well, I was horrified by this information, but I was already in too deep. And luckily, I have found my way, and I am not here to instill fear, but give you the information that I simply did not have. So know that you are already doing better than me just by clicking on this video. Now, if you are new here, hello, my name is Allyssa Powers, and I created this YouTube channel to teach you the things that grad school didn't so you can thrive in the mental health field, and finances were definitely not talked about in my grad program. So this fits the bill. I'm a therapist of over 7 years. I am in private practice and I have a continuing education business. It is always linked below at alyssapowers.com. Okay, so I've been doing some research about this topic because the last time I made a financial video that had like numbers involved, it was almost 2.5 years ago. And it was actually my first video I ever made on this channel, which is funny because it is my video with the most views, and I was not great at talking to the camera yet, but if you are someone who found me from that video, thank you for subscribing. I think I have improved since then. And I wanted to actually give you some numbers instead of just saying like, well, it's really variable and it depends on a lot of things, which yes, it does, but I'm seeing some trends and some numbers that are kind of sticking out to me. So first things first, when I say therapist, I am talking about anyone who is doing a job as a talk therapist. So maybe a marriage and family therapist, maybe a licensed professional counselor, maybe a social worker. Those are the three I'm talking about in this video. I would usually say psychologists too, but really their pay is typically higher than ours, so I don't want to skew the numbers. But if that is you, then let's talk. There are two main jobs that people go into post-grad. One is going to be an agency job. So in community mental health, working at an agency is probably the most common path forward. We see that there is a huge narrative about paying your dues and kind of working in community mental health where you might have 35 plus clients on your caseload. You don't have a ton of autonomy over who you're seeing, but you are getting really good experience. And then the other path is private practice, which is probably the less common path for new grads, but people do it. I know I worked at a group practice at an internship and then went straight into working for that same practice post-grad. And while you might know, if you have heard anything about private practice therapy, that private practice therapists can make great money, it doesn't always start out that way, right? Because private practice therapists have to build a caseload, and it can often be slow going because you're finding clients who either have the ability to self-pay, or maybe they have private insurance or really, good benefits, but that it's not probably like Medicaid focused, whereas an agency might have like way more accessibility, right? They might accept all Medicaid, Medicare, have a big sliding scale, that kind of thing. So it's really easy to get the volume of clients. So let's look at the numbers, and I will link the ZipRecruiter webpage that I am going off of in the description box if you are curious. I really like ZipRecruiter because they are basing these numbers off of their own algorithm that is based off of job postings in each state. And while I think that can kind of skew things because you don't know exactly like what jobs are actually being, filled and what the like final salary is, I think it gives us a good number of like what is being put out there because there is just so much variable. So let me grab my laptop and break it down for you. So this is average therapist salary by state, and it's not based off of like first year therapists because honestly, finding that information is next to impossible. I did find someone who had a table and had it compiled, but the numbers were extremely high and I just did not trust their information. And honestly, it's kind of hard to trust numbers like this online. So on the high end of just average therapist salary, I was seeing in the 70,000 range on the high end. So places that have higher cost of living like Washington, D.C., New York, California, places like that, I was seeing closer to the $70,000 range. And then places with lower cost of living, I was seeing the number 65,000 a lot. In fact, most of these are right around there. So with the lowest being, I think, around 50,000. So like I said, these numbers are just very basic averages, but I want to throw it out there that as a therapist, we aren't seeing a huge growth in salary anyways. What happens is most people work at an agency for a couple years and then either become a supervisor or take on a more leadership role at the agency to get paid a little bit more, or they end up in private practice working less hours and maybe making kind of within that similar range. Or if they are charging a high fee and doing the whole cash pay practice, then maybe making, six figures. But I would say as a new grad, on average, you could expect to make around $50,000 a year. Where I came up with that number is that the most variability I see is around that $10,000 mark, give or take. So it seems like if the average salary per state is around 65,000, I would say 50 to 55 would be a good starting place. Are there places that are going to pay you absolute pennies, like BetterHelp and those big tech companies? Yes, like there are probably therapists in their first year that are making that 35,000, which is insane. I don't even know how people are living off of that in this day and age. Because like I said, I was in grad school 8 years ago. So when that therapist gave me that number, like it has actually gone up since then with inflation and all of the things. But I want to give you that $50,000 to $55,000 range as a good jumping off point. I know I have so many therapists here who are currently in grad school or about to be looking for their first job, and I have a ton of resources for you. If that is you, subscribe, stick around. I have all kinds of therapist resources. You can look at the playlist Baby Therapists, and you will find a lot of resources for you. But I would shoot for around that range, because even if you are someone who's really interested in private practice, which, hello, I'm going to have a course for you very soon, hopefully in 2026, about building a private practice that will be giving continuing education credits for as well. But it takes time to build a practice. Usually people in their first year of private practice are not just instantly making six figures, because there is so much building phase of a private practice. Even if you work at a group practice, for instance, like I did, I had to build a caseload, get consistent clients, and then, you have a split with your the owner of the practice. So everything I brought in, my boss was taking that 40% for overhead costs and, our simple practice subscription, rent, all the things. It makes sense that it's done that way. But just know that those numbers that these online therapists are talking about can sometimes be really inflated, or at least seem that way, because they are very, very established. By the time I was, 6 years into practice, I hadn't accepted a new client in 2 years or something like that. So I had my people, I had my consistent caseload. I knew that they weren't going to no-show, and I had that consistency and could really rely on my income because of that. So I hope this makes sense. I want to know if you are someone who is a new grad, or you've been a new grad in the past couple of years, would you be transparent with me and comment below what state you live in and what the starting salary is where you're looking, and maybe give some context of is it a private practice? Is it a group practice? Is it an agency? Is it a school? I'm so curious. And let me know too, do you think that this is a livable starting wage? We are the worst paid master's degree holders, so I would argue to say we deserve to be paid more, but is $50,000 to $55,000 a year doable for you? Yes or no? Everyone has different circumstances. Okay, thanks for listening, and subscribe, stick around, and I will see you next time. Bye.